Welcome to YouTube Masterclass. Tonight we are getting together with the USC, Calarts, and remotely also with Harvard, with degrees from those schools confirming that I'm allowed to be a professor at those schools with a doctorate from California Institute of the Arts. It's been a doctorate since 2020, so I'm over the 4 year hump, but it still seems like brand new to me. Like I just got my PhD yesterday, but it actually was in 2020. Isn't that funny? Because as a professor, you're asked to always talk about it. Moving right along, you could register with Coursera and get courses out of it for one of the three schools. They all have a remote line from this service on YouTube Masterclass so that they too can use the classes at their schools. I can use their insignia on my school list and get you course credits through that if you listen to these lectures. And I've heard some say they're kind of easy. Some of my friends said these are easy lectures, and I hope to make them somewhat user friendly and easy. But I think we've explored some really difficult concepts. I think the concept just of versus overdetermination or free will, because what in a movie is actually free will is not, because it's told what to do, maybe by someone writing free will of what to do, but not like writing what the person should do, and that person does that, the actor follows the script. And is this really free will? Because if it's determinism, we already know that it's going to be a certain way in its genre as a movie. But we're actually studying special effects, and those are just some critical studies atmospheres I needed to put away. Last week we really got into critical studies, so we're not going to do that again. We're going to talk about the special effects. And there's some interesting. I was talking about backmasking last time in Eyes Wide Shut, and I remember that backmasking was in Lost Highway too. And we're not going to go over this film much right now. We're going to go right to a really good one that we need to talk about. Night of the Living Dead. They're both perfect movies, and we should be talking about both. That they have a similar haunting theme, of course. The reason I bring up Lost Highway is to actually let you know that right now at the Directors Guild of America, uh, David Lynch runs the whole thing. He helps run, actually does run, the American Film Institute. So I'm very indebted to him and all that he's given me in my scholarships and everything, and I'll pay him back. By showing his videos up here, he's an outstanding guy. He's an outstanding guy. He has great ideas. He's got the whole way to launch it. I mean, we've got to just face it. He pretty much is the best American director. I mean, we've got Quentin Tarantino, we've got Spielberg, Scorsese, David Lynch, technically crafted though. I'd almost go with him just for his old-fashioned and yet brand new way of bringing the brand new and the old-fashioned together in almost this pop cult of David Lynch. And that Lost Highway is more search for the giant caterpillars out in Dune Highway because they're going to launch one at you. And yeah, there's some things that are controversial about Lost Highway, but I don't want to get into it. I mean, it seems like somebody else's business, and I don't really follow too many plots outside of the plot of the movie, so I wasn't really looking for any kind of witch hunt on any movie I ever saw and thought, man, I should really do something about that guy, or maybe that guy was a bad guy and I should have gone after him too. It's like nobody has that level of delusion, and if they do, they can maybe need a therapist to get through this kind of like film hysteria where suddenly they think that they made the movie. And I'm not saying like a third world like imperfect cinema where you do make the movie with your mind and you kind of everything that projects is what your mind is kind of wanting it to project at that time. I understand that. And that's a special effect known as symmetry on a tracking shot, like an I Am Soy Cuba or I Am Cuba. The tracking shot is a special effect because on each side of the camera it maintains a certain balance of symmetry where the shot is the same on both sides, mirroring each other. And that's the whole hypnosis of it. This actually has many scenes with special effects that are actually fake blood. There's sex in it. It's really wild film. Some of it's just for entertainment. I like the idea that you can make an art film avant-garde and be for entertainment. It's a good idea. That's what David Lynch kind of came up with, the idea that an avant-garde art film can be made good. And I just wanted to thank him for running all that. So we'll get back to this, but I'd like to require, for class, for an A. If you can't find a copy of this, don't worry about it. But I'm actually, for once, asking you all to watch it. I don't need to watch it again. I remember what happens. The wife and the couple, they go in with the camera. They see nothing. Suddenly, there's a video. It's like them killing each other, and then they're okay, kind of, but they're still not okay. Everything starts getting messed up, and finally, he's in prison because he killed someone and he thinks it's her, and he'd already seen the video, which keeps getting like menace to society, menace to society pushed around with the video that's like got supposedly him as the killer. So then he goes out like to the Mulholland Drive place, and he decides to go back and kill her, and then whether she's already dead or not, she's coming, like, that's where she comes out. If she's not dead or not, it's got Marilyn Manson on the score. And I'm not getting too far off track because we are supposed to say special effects. But one thing you got to give a movie like this is, even on the cover, you can see how the headlights of a car on a dark highway kind of light things up just enough for the one key lighting. And you can also notice that the female, Patricia Arquette, is the femme fatale in this, and that this is film noir, even in the vein of Kiss Me Deadly If You Can Believe. It's Lost Highway. And I wouldn't give anything but to just be able to sit down and watch Lost Highway a couple of times and freak out and write an essay about it, So if you can't find it, or if you've already seen it, write a little one-pager about it. It's good homework for this class. We needed more. And what I want you to do is look at how they made the camera shot what it is, and the camera shot, and how that conveyed the storytelling. That'll probably be more like the final. So just a suggested question for now that you need to answer. And once you have it answered, you'll be all done with what you need to do, except the videos. I'm sorry, these are getting boring. I'm going to pull this up a little bit more and get a little bit more exciting here. So we're watching this movie called Night of the Living Dead. And Night of the Living Dead is George A. Romero. Now, you got to understand that George Romero made all 5 of the Dead movies. He made Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, and Diary of the Dead. Now, you got to understand that's 5 in a same series that all started with this one from 1968. I love this version on DVD. I'm so glad I got this version. It's such a nice version of none other than Night of the Living Dead. Now, the special effects in this are what make it, because the land of zombies that they create, even at the beginning of the movie, when the zombies start attacking, the land of the zombies are like shredded beef, and they have like, I don't know, they have like a face on a face, like Frankenstein, like Frankenstein always wore somebody's face or something. And these zombies are real nasty, and they've got like big like chunks taken out of them, and they've got like incisor wounds, and it looks like somebody may have even fought them earlier and they got loose and were just going on. Now, from what I know about these zombies, they're kind of like werewolves. They attack more at night. Also, they're like, they eat human brains, and the only way to kill them is to destroy their brain. So, like at the end of this movie, when they're rounding them up and killing them, that's what you call those little things that you attach to your shirt and explode. Well, they're connected to a tube and they explode. It looks like you've been shot. Now, let me just explain this special effect first of all. Where are you going to get the costume to look like you just came back from the dead, first of all? Then if you're eating someone's brains, this is a really intense makeup effect, and prop effect, because they're making it look like that. But then all that topped is Night of the Living Dead's one of those movies like Easy Rider that didn't cost that much to make and made tons of money when it came out. Like, it was almost Exorcist money when it came out. And like, the thing is the makeup in it's really good in all those movies that I mentioned by George Romero. Even Diary of the Dead has great makeup use, and it's a great movie. And so with the Living Dead, they really had this mastery over how they were going to move and act, and how they were going to have makeup effects everywhere, and that's how they're telling the story, is the makeup effect, and it looks like they're black and white for the purpose of when the things explode with blood. It really looks like blood in the black and white, even though it's maybe like darker in the day or something, or darker in color. And maybe they didn't want to shoot in color. I mean, this is a weird film in black and white, because they always say that Bonnie and Clyde started the color movement in Hollywood. And that's what I always say. Like, they started doing color after that. But really, I don't know if it was till 1969 that they started doing only color, because George Romero would then be the first one that used a black and white film after Bonnie and Clyde. So it's a real tough squeeze in that time circle, because they weren't using black and white anymore in Hollywood films. This is an independent film that then was sold by Hollywood to be even more successful for them and the film. And that's why there's so many sequels. And George Romero being like this Italian horror, like Fulci, in his Vampires Lesbos by Jesus Franco, and Fulci doing Zombie 2, and, you know, um, you have these Italian directors that are horror directors, like Dario Argento, and George Romero was kind of in that class, but then kind of got involved, kind of like John Carpenter did, in certain film schools. Now I'm not sure if he ever settled on one film school, but he was always making this film as though it was going to be low budget, but the monster effects are what I'm getting at. The monster effects are really good. I mean, if you look at the scene where it's like the March of the Living Dead, and they're coming for the house, they're getting, like, you're looking at them like their faces already been torn off, and they look really scary, and they're coming for me, and you can tell that they're zombies, and that they're going to have to fight all the zombies is a cue we get later, all the way down to Dead Alive, which is a Night of the Living Dead spinoff, which even Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead 2 and the Night of the Living Dead remake and the Night of the Living Dead remake and all the other Dead movies that followed. Dawn of the Dead got remade. I'm sure they'll remake Day of the Dead someday. I want them to. I'm greenlighting a remake of Day of the Dead right now. All in honor of the Night of the Living Dead series. And all of those movies I just named, it wasn't to be redundant. It's to say they had great special effects. I mean, the believability that these people are zombies, like when the little girl's eating her parents in the basement in Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, it looks gory, atrocious, maniacal, and barbaric, and totally the most awesome movie. Oh, dude, yeah, I mean, like, the gunshots taken at the zombies are not always in vain. Some of those true romances with Wild One come in there, and I don't know. I think the Night of the Living Dead's really one of those films that's impressed a lot of people around the world when they saw it, and I think that it's really made a difference in how movies are made, just especially action where zombies are chasing you. And The Walking Dead is another example of the Night of the Living Dead story living on forever, and that's why it's one of the great horror films. Now I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to Lost Highway when I need to, but Night of the Living Dead can't be overlooked in the terms of how they use really hard to do special effects to put the movie together the right way, to make it like the exploitation that they want, to make it like the blood and guts they do want to show in the horror film. But in that kind of case, they're using things like still fake props out of everything. They're not doing it for real. They're doing it out of fake props, and that's the funny thing about it. Italian cinema is you get the sense that they're doing it for the real, but actually it's being faked anyway. And it's those reenactments and everything by Rossellini. But Romero is kind of filming it like a documentary, and that the camera here is a special effect of a documentary accord, even when they see on public TV How to Kill a Zombie on the evening news. And I think that it's interesting that there's an African American in this who they wait until there was none. story with all the people getting killed one by one by one by the zombies, and the zombies are overpowering everybody. That's a theme of all these movies. The zombies are overpowering everybody. It's like theory of Armageddon. It's like the end of the world. It's like you always know when zombies are walking the hills and coming after you with hacksaws and chainsaws and everything, that you know that it's the end of the world. And when you're at the end of the world, Night of the Living Dead is what takes you there, because this is an apocalyptic movie that is more important to watch than to read Revelation out of the Bible. This is what the real post-apocalypse is going to be like. And because they had somehow a glimmer of past history of nothing that precedented this. I mean, the other zombies before were like White Zombie, which is a beautiful zombie movie. I mean, he's kind of this like narcissistic uh, Nicodemus, like, Nostradamus type character. And I don't know. I mean, like, I don't think that Night of the Living Dead is atoning for anything, but all of the makeup effects had to imply that they saw something in some drawings, etchings, somewhere in a like Gaelic sword manual, I don't know, of The Walking Dead. And there's one thing about it that I also don't understand. It's how I Walked with a Zombie has a zombie walking, but it's kind of being puppeteered and controlled by the voodoo priest. And I know they can summon bodies and everything, and that's kind of how the reanimator turned all these on in Day of the Dead. But that the reanimators in Day of the Dead, I'm not going to give away. I just like to throw things out there for the pop culture reference. So, Night of the Living Dead, another quality of it is that from the beginning to end, they're being hunted down by zombies, and then in the end, you can't help feeling bad that the army turns back on the zombies for coming after their brains and kills them all. For the most part, in extinction go the zombies, which is actually a happier ending for the first one, to not even set up Return of the Living Dead, which is actually after all of them, I think, or after Day of the Dead, and then Land of the Dead, and then Diary of the Dead. Heck, it's hard to keep track of, but the Night of the Living Dead is the one that starts them all, and it sets them on this path. And because there's no real precedent to it, and I Walked with the Dead is like not the same as these Frankenstein type vampire. They're like vampire werewolves. I've once heard Dr. Casper in his horror class. Very attention to this. They're vampire werewolves. They eat brains, they get shot in the brain, and they come back to life every single time you kill them. That's a direct quote from Dr. Casper. So he would say that why we like this film is because it's like a popcorn movie. It's entertaining, right? We can sit there while they're eating brains on screen. We can eat our popcorn and be like, brains, brains. No, I'm not trying to get him in trouble. He would never be on the level of anyone to say that in the show. But you want any brains? No, I didn't just say that. Oh, I'm in trouble now. Come on, we're getting controversial. But there is one thing I liked about what Dr. Casper was saying about the entertainment in this. He says it's transglorious. That means it's absolutely beyond sublime. That means this is the move pathway to Zen, and watching these zombies rise and then fall is one of the most excellent quests. And that the makeup effects are probably better here than anywhere else, and those are the guys that invented it. Makes sense. Makes sense. I'll leave you with that. And I'm going to go to another horror movie, which is going to be just as controversial. Although now that we're looking at Night of the Living Dead objectively, it doesn't seem as controversial. But they are eating brains. Your kid eats your parents. Black guy gets killed on accident. All this demusement. The zombies attack the place 100 times. They keep killing people. They're turning them into zombies. They blow up the gas station. That's a special effect. They put a bomb in the actual set of the gas station and blew it up. But you could tell they weren't using real gasoline to blow it up. They might have used something like referent to gasoline. But if the gasoline would have blown up, it would have blown up that whole neighborhood. It would have been like a Oppenheimer explosion, you know? Oh man, Night of the Living Dead is one of the all star movies of action amazement. I can't say it enough. You've probably seen it in one way or another. There are some forms of it where they make fun of it while it's on. Those are kind of funny, but I like the real version. Kind of scary, actually, that they're vampire werewolves. And you can just kind of let that remnant through your mind. Vampire werewolves. Alright, we're moving on. The next movie I want to talk about for quite a while is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because there's a certain thing about this movie that I can't really deny comes in hardship with all of the relationships I've had with uh, the psychological community, because they would say not to review movies from the horror film, maybe because the horror films give people a bad feeling, or they are negative stories, or like bad things happen in the story. And we already heard that in Night of the Living Dead, very bad things. But I did give it into my psychologist on on one of my books, on several of my books, but particularly this textbook I was writing called The Critical Decathlon. And I turned it into my psychiatrist and psychologist, and had them go through the whole book and make sure it was politically, psychologically, whatever it needed to be correct. Because I did not want to hit, I was such a long book that I was like, I did not want to hit an instigator in there if they didn't like what they were reading. And they went through it and they actually gave it 100%. So we were on the same page. But just to let you know, I'm not necessarily promoting like an early Halloween or that we have to watch horror movies right now. This is the special effects class. And while we could be talking about sci-fi plots, like how Star Trek does its special effect with the taser where they put light drawings on the film stock, and that's pretty cool. But in the last two films we've seen, these are the gangbusters of special effects. I mean, yeah, that they're horror films, I understand, but that they're the ultimate. That all the guys are dressed up and look like Frankenstein in this. And he's our zombie, right? And in this, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, I had a relationship with some friends in a band called Shotgun Hoedown, and they're from Grand Junction, too, so it is a more famous town than you thought, you know. So they showed a screening of it after a show of theirs, and I was so scared. I wanted to run out of the theater. I think I did run out of the theater. I was so scared and ran back in to see if it was still on. And then I was going to run back out and leave, which I did not leave because I wanted to hang out and smoke a boat later. So, anyways, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is so scary, and a lot of it's this cavalcade of sight and sound. Now, the sound on Night of the Living Dead is actually cool when they go from documentary to reality to like a regular way a room is filmed to the grunting and groaning of the zombies, etc. But this movie kind of has this whole storyline that there's kind of this Bates Hotel like place, which I think it's based on Psycho anyway. And there's this Bates Hotel place, and if you go there, get the side of the road, accidentally wander on, then there's a bunch of serial killers that all live in a family that go out even looking for people on the road to kill. And they're just like these Death Valley monsters, and they're killing all these people, you know. And so what do you have it with these kids like have to pull over right there? I mean, if you said not to in a film, everybody has to. And they get beaten by like giant hammer down Colossus robots. But they're not robots, they're these big beastly dudes. And they're swinging around with chainsaws. Now, that it's all shot like kind of like Pink Flamingos meets Deliverance, you know? No, it's all sappy in the way that it yellows it out, but it has this, and that's kind of a way of the film. This film almost took it on itself a horror film code of being black and white, but like dangerous in the dark and kind of less dangerous in the light, you know? And that's one theme that you'll see in the lighting schemes of Night of the Living Dead, because it has so many abstract lighting scenes and camera angles and twisted angles and everything and upside down shots, and the whole time, you know, they're doing these exciting things, and we're already breathing into the way it's edited so that you only can concentrate on the characters in the film, who are here actually pretty full because they constantly are in Armageddon or the apocalypse, trapped by zombies, and now they've got to say what they've got to say. And that is like instinctive anyway, because what you're going to say at the end of the world is a little more extreme and exaggerated than what you're going to say, like, just in a movie class. Like, I'm not going to say that watching this film will really make you feel hopeless against the attack, because don't forget, it ends happily ever after. It's kind of a bizarre ending. I didn't mind it ending happily ever after, because I felt kind of bad for the zombies all of a sudden, Especially if in Land of the Dead that one zombie's supposed to be a nice guy. If he's supposed to be a nice guy, then, well, I hope I don't have to shoot my way through a room of them. Anyways, I don't know, but we're going on to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Anyway, it's funny because there's nothing about this film that gives away what it's like. The reason I mentioned Deliverance or anything like that is because it's cutting back and forth, and it's architect sense of closure each time. Leatherface, the killer of these films, is Leatherface. And anybody anybody that gets trapped on the road gets killed by him. That he's the cornerstone of all these future movies that actually, like Night of the Living Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre had tons of sequels. They just had a remake recently, and just had a Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface movie, and they just keep making them, and they're great films even now, and that they're scary, and that there's blood everywhere, and that you've got to believe me that they're doing this with older horror films. They're going back and making them again, and this isn't too old. It's from the 70s. This being from 1968, we can see as a direct antecedent to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in the sense that the blood and guts, which are special effects. And one thing that you've got to realize is we don't really kill people in horror movies, but we make it look like there are people getting killed in horror movies. Nobody's really ever died while making a horror movie. Max Schreck didn't last long after Nosferatu, and but that's a whole other story. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a longevity of its series, and the first one, this is a really good updated edition of it, and it made the Village Voice Top 100. But I think the way they do the blood and guts in it, like in Taxi Driver, for instance, is really realistic, but really special effects realistic. With they give you arms, prosthetic hands to get blown off. They do prosthetics. They go the distance to make the special effect look real. So then we're all taking sympathy for these kids that stop in a bus. They get slashed to death by Leatherface and thrown against the wall on a spike. And then there you have my psychology friends going, well, you don't really have to tell them about how all the violence goes down in it. Let them experience that for themselves. So I can respect that, because I don't want to sit here and just like degrade how all the violence is done, and that they throw them in a meat grinder in Fargo or whatever else we don't need to hear about. But that there is like people being mushed in unusual ways, and I guess we kind of do have to abstract that it's got to look like something in the special effect room, and that they can make pictures look like that is scary, I think, to a widespread appeal. Otherwise not, because they don't like the idea of the person you're watching the film, which is usually someone you like because you like actors, and they don't even have to know you for you to like them, and there you go. But you don't have to sit and explain like how something happened when it happened. But in a way, you've got to take a look at it, because like the scene in Psycho that kind of sets up these Texas Chainsaw Massacre aesthetic movements of killing and stealing, I guess. And when they pin him up on the wall and everything, like I said twice. And so Hitchcock, this even says, it did for meat eating what Hitchcock did for shower taking. Love it. Hitchcock's shower scene was aesthetic too. And that means that at the scene of the killing, all these cinematic processes that enhance the filmmaking process are being used at the same time. The filters, the lights, the freaking focus plane, the dolly shot, the tracking shot. They set all of this up, and that they set all this up even on a very low budget level here. Again, this movie made even more, if not as much, as The Night of the Living Dead on its own. And these are movies that live in agony and ecstasy, because let me tell you, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when it first came out, was so scary that people thought it really was real, and it went back to that Blair Witch Project factor, which is actually a special effect of the publicity stunt. It's a publicity stunt when the filmmakers come out and say that all the filmmakers are dead, and then they say, want to watch our movie. Because they're the filmmakers, and even if they don't look like the people in the film, they're the filmmakers. So if the filmmakers are just coming back to life, well, good for them, but, it's like, the filmmakers all died, but we're the filmmakers now. Okay, who appointed you? The dead filmmakers? No, I'm just kidding. There probably are somewhere in this planet somewhere wondering whatever happened to the third cast of the Blair Witch Project. And just thinking about it's making me wince in fear. All right. But as far as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one thing that I like about it is that, again, it's done kind of in this documentary style. It's in color this time, but it's in a documentary style. That the director is Tobe Hooper, who we love from Spielberg, Poltergeist. That we had said that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was Tobe Hooper is a good thing, and he's really good at directing horror films. And I can't really go through all of his movies or any of his movies really that he had made, but he's an outstanding director, and he's most known for Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist. That he has done that movie Martin, that was Tobe Hooper. And there's a few he had remade some movies. And why he had definitely was uncredited for some movies, and he's a great director. I've seen essential films by Tobe Hooper that I have to apologize. I'm not requiring to mind, but that he made this one, and it's on the Village Voice Top 100. I say that's really good for him. I say excellent job at doing that one great film and getting it on the Village Voice list. I mean, the chances of that happening are like 1 in about 500,000. I don't think that happens to many, but the chances in film narrows as to how good the film actually is and how many effects they put in this. Well, all the blood's fake. Some of the old people got skin on them that looks older. Some of the faces they're wearing, which you notice they're wearing faces in these movies as serial killers. And the serial killer Last House at the left, or the serial killer The Hills Have Eyes of Wes Craven, are going to be kind of in the same nightmare area as these films. And I think it's only fair to say that the blood and violence in these films looks real, not just because special effects, but because of the acting that's done in the film. And that was kind of Night of the Living Dead, breeding another realism, that same realism we have in this story really could happen, and it looks like it did type scarefest. There's some other scarefests about this movie that are supernatural. Like, you got to admit, Night of the Living Dead's kind of supernatural, but mostly it's like toxic waste turned these guys into running demons. They needed Toxic Avenger there, right? But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I mean, these guys come after him with like hooks and wongs and nails, and they smash him up. All I'm getting at is that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in its color film, looks again like a realist a realist film. And the supernatural in Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the voice of the old man, who we can't tell is saying what he's saying, or if he is saying it because you suddenly hear the old man talking, and then you hear him saying it, or it's not looped on purpose, or he can't talk at all, and you still hear like the devil's voice. That happens at the dinner table, that happens in the truck. I think that's the scariest freaking sound effect I've ever heard, is that old man screaming at them with this like old dark house beard, and he's like craggy with them all. That guy scares me, dude. Oh, and I'm holding the film like up to me. So, do we normally talk about horror films just when we want? You should get together with people that do. I mean, like in film, we do, because that's where all the special effect money is really going, is to a movie like The Crow by Brendan Lee. I mean, these films are going to get us into makeup effects and make us realize that blood and guts in films is makeup and effects, and that's how they do the effects. They just, you just have the fake blood and just throw it everywhere, and keep throwing it, and the fake blood goes flying. There's blood coming off of you. It's the same kind of effect with any kind of those films where the person gets hacked up, and then that, like, there's a tube spraying blood on one hand, and another thing is they did a really bad chainsaw special effect in the movie Scarface by Brian De Palma, and it's a remake of the Paul Muni version, and they've got this chainsaw that literally caves down on this dude's head because he won't like pay his bill or something, and so they kill him, and it's like this Cuban TV is on, and all of a sudden there's this scene from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it seems like, in the middle of Scarface, and I love that because that's a signal that they're still using the effect for Scarface, and it really came from the ideals of the set of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, we only have one more film to talk about. We talked about it a little bit up front. And before I do dismiss Texas Chainsaw, I know I've said a lot about it. I know I've been on the hunch for a while for a good amount of how they use film aesthetics in these movies, and I don't deride anything about these horror films. The way they're edited together is another effect special, because they make them go from least to greatest climactically every time, from least chance the monster will get you to most chance the monster will get you. And we've gone all that way and reached the threshold. You realize the threshold is the monster, and then it's either going to destroy you or renew you into it. And that's really all it does, is it either absorbs you into itself or it destroys you, and there's nothing left but some dude singing Against the Wind. No, I'm kidding. All right, well, next one. Oh, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, perfect small town Texas movie. I mean, if you're going to kick off all the Texas small town movies that are made, this really is the one that kicks them all off. And that it's kind of an exploitation film. That means it was kind of going for the cheesy on purpose, low budget on purpose. That it was trying to be entertaining, and it totally was, but then went too far kind of with the things that looked a little bit scarier in the frame. And that Tobe Hooper is totally underrated, and we all love him. We all love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That, the tubes, and the dropping the fake blood everywhere, and having your innards ripped out. Sorry, class. My psychologists aren't going to like that I said that. So we'll just skip that. But like being ripped apart as they are, there's always a seamless victory of the narrator, and that is the narrator of us saying, pass me the popcorn. Pass me the popcorn. I'm really entertained. And I know there's a whole difficulty saying, well, can anyone really be entertained by a horror film if it's about something deeply disgusting? And I say, well, sometimes there are melodramas with something deeply disgusting, or sometimes there are like musicals that can be deeply disgusting, not in a bad way, but that's not really the criteria I pick to watch my films. But if they're slasher horror films, which this is the basic menace of slash horror films, it's the origin of slash horror films, there you have it. Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, we're going back to David Lynch, and we meant to set him up at the beginning so we could come back. And I hope I don't have to keep you much longer for class, because I know you all have places to go and things to think about and student films to make and whatever else you're attending and whatever else they've brought to us at Harvard for film school, and USC Film School just thrives, continue to thrive, for all those units to pay them back for all the great things they do for us. And the Calarts way, and we love at Calarts a good session of how do we make this the hardest school for everyone. And I love that, because you want to go to the hardest school you can. When you graduate, you can have it on your record that says that you went to the hardest school of all, and it was yours. And that's what I like about Calarts. It's the world's hardest school. And that makes it hard, But you get through it, and you find a way. Not like in The Lost Highway. Now look at this. This looks like a Kiss Me Deadly thing. It also is reminding me again of Psycho, and that he's using a knife in this like he's some kind of common serial killer. Is Bill Pullman at the beginning of this movie slowly being enticed by a video or not to become a mass murderer of his own wife, who in this picture is alive, and he kills her at the beginning. That there's a different cast for some of the characters, and there's doppelgangers. There is a serial killer in this film, not going to go into it, don't know enough about it, something to do with In Cold Blood, not really big on the gossip stories, but whatever happened, I'm sure David Lynch was well aware of his presence in the movie and wasn't too worried about it on his account. And he just, if he needs to know, he doesn't, but I don't really mind if he does that. It doesn't bother me. Anyway, so the thing that's cool about Lost Highway, though, is that it does use special effects, not just of the gore, of him thinking he sees homicide or really does create a homicide, and then that he is given to psychology again, would maybe have trouble with this film, but not really, because it covers a psychological angle. Like, for instance, the femme fatale, Patricia Arquette, is taken by this underground criminal overlord, and you hear this Marilyn Manson music playing, and we're already off in another dimension, which Lynch does a lot since Dune, where you skip ahead to another dimension, or you go to another storyline that never intersects with the one you're on, but is important to tell to the story. Because the storyline doesn't have to intersect. And a lot of these don't, where she's taken aside and the Marilyn Manson music plays. And by the way, Du Hast comes from this. Du Hast, everyone. It's that German Rammstein song. And we absolutely love Rammstein. So we're taking very seriously the film commands of Lost Highway and the things in which we can notice about it being kind of a special effects film, but more so with the overlapping picture and overlapping dialogue. Do you see a real container of effects? Except for the lighting scheme in a lot of the scenes, like where Marilyn Manson music is played and Patricia Arquette's taken prisoner. That scene kind of repeats is with a surety, but that there's more to the same scene shown twice, which is a big point of this film, that there's some shortcuts, Robert Altman-like moments, that the film pulls over to, and they're kind of lightweighted jokes hammered in this huge underscore of murder and lust and destruction and horror, And then there's these kind of spoofs on Leave It to Beaver going on at the same time. Not really that, because now we're looking at a Dusk Till Dawn type other narrative, And you've got to look very closely at how David Lynch is doing these things and orchestrating this. And what it is a suspense thriller anyway. Now, if you knew the type of ways they did those driving in the car scenes in films, in special effects, that's a very decent special effect. I like how in Pierre Le Fou, when they were driving him and the Anna Karina, John Belmondo and Anna Karina were driving through the rain, and it was just like you could tell they hadn't moved, but the lights on the back of the car kept going around and around and around in the same order, making this symmetry look like the car was moving. It was so beautiful when they used to do that. In Pulp Fiction, it's so beautiful when the back of the camera isn't what you see, or the camera going out towards the car isn't what you see of the background in the taxi cab that Bruce Willis rides in with the Spanish prostitute driving him. And I'm not saying that the background wasn't imperfect on purpose, because it really wasn't imperfect, but that it's a light streak line of a kind of, it's not an in-camera effect because you can make it digital, but it's like early, let's splice a shot somewhere it's not at. I mean, you got to look at these intricately, these shots and how they get them, especially the car moving. I like the ones where you're really in the car moving. Hey, why not? Liability is a little scarier, maybe, I don't know. But I like the ones in the car while it's going, like you got gun crazy. I like when, and in this one you can tell that the car is going. It's a lost highway that he spends more time looking for it. But you gotta be cool with it because David Bowie's on the soundtrack too, you know. And if David Bowie did Man Who Fell to Earth, do you remember that special effect in Man Who Fell to Earth where those two guys were throwing that guy out of the window of this big, like, 30-story building, and his body turned into, like, poof. They threw it out the window, and it was like this dummy of the guy falling. It's like the chick that falls in Birth of a Nation. It's like this, it's a dummy. It's not a real person, but why they have to do that again, I don't know. Why they have to show the death of the dude. They could just say he's dead. Maybe we have to see how someone dies to really capitulate that they're dead. I don't know why we ever have to see that in movies, but it's in every movie. As Hollywood requires at least one person die during the movie, you know, not on the making of the movie. A lot of them live through those. But in the film itself, there has to be a death, and those deaths are condoned by makeup effects. Like at funerals, you see the body and its makeup effect, or a hair effect, or a special effect. And that camera movement started out as special effect. We already discussed that, but all I'm getting at is that in Lost Highway, when there's driving in Lost Highway, it looks like he's really going somewhere and he's taking this long path, and we can see that emanated in David Lynch's Straight Story, which has Richard Farnsworth in his final movie, and Richard Farnsworth rides a riding lawnmower across the country to see his brother, finally meets up with him after this long ride with adventures and like women running into reindeer and stuff on the side of the road. But David Lynch, Straight Story is a road movie, and you're pretty much inside of the tractor and not going faster than the tractor on the movie, and I love that. I love that. We've got to pay tribute to David Lynch. Now, here's an interesting factor about David Lynch. He did once and still does love special effects, because in his first movie, Eraserhead, is an all special effect movie that the girl has cheeks out to here, and the baby's not really dying or is, and it's kind of like this scary baby that's dying or isn't, and that the dad's trying to take care of everything, but he's already like a hobbit or something, and then that, like, his wife doesn't even exist, but she might be puffy faced lady, and they're not sure. And the reason I bring up Eraserhead as being avant-garde and entertaining, but also less for the mainstream and more for the underground, is definitely not dated in that film, and it's one of those things that they used actually more special effects, which makes me wonder. I mean, I know in these Land of the Dead movies they use more special effects, but the special effects in Eraserhead are really intricate too, like Night of the Living Dead. They're really like, there's things wrapped around these like Muppet baby type innuendos for this whole film that's like almost as offensive as some scenes of Cremaster, and you look at Cremaster and all the special effects they did that cost like Avatar's same price tag, like $1 billion. I mean, they paid for these like art films to have special effects in them, and this is what they got. And then I ended up liking that movie. I know it's one of those words we don't say often because it's like offensive, but what I'm getting at is like there's things in these films that are kind of uh, outre. And I'm not saying it's normally what you'd watch on a movie. And that's why the great horror films, there's a lot of them, but there's really only a few centered ones that we're going through. And we won't only go through horror films. We'll get back on like Wizard of Oz land or whatever until we can get through these horror films. That's what we're going to focus on with effects. I hope you can see like how you would look like a Frankenstein with makeup effects, or with a mask, or there could be masks, or there could be, you know, arms that are like made to look to be ripping apart in the Night of the Living Dead, and like the Dune worm and like the worm in Eraserhead are probably cousins, but I don't know. So I'm gonna end with this. We'll end with this, and then we'll go to the barbecue and have some food and go see the USC Trojan game. That's what we're supposed to do. But I think they pulled it off when they brought in all these actors to do Lost Highway, because whatever they were thinking, they made a seminal work of how light and color and intonation do special effects. And then Muppet special effects are coming from the same lineage here of Eraserhead. But I think I would have to side more with Lost Highway as a film I like to watch. But I do love Eraserhead, even though I'm not really sure I quite know what it's about. And to know what a David Lynch film is about is a kind of failure, because you're not supposed to know what it's really about when you're watching it. So you can get really into it and not really know much of what it's about. That of the other filmmakers, Tobe Hooper, I do apologize for not having a quandary of his films running back for me, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre we'll never forget. We'll never forget it. Village Voice Top 100. The Thing, the blood and guts coming off the rail. What you do there is you put the like real meat that looks like it's supposed to be human, and you put it against the chainsaw, and then you put like the distance between them, but you move the camera so it looks like they're close by, and then you have the meat get sawed, and then it's flying all over. That's how they do that special effect. I'm not trying to ruin it for you, but they just basically grind meat off the thing to make it look like the dude's getting cut in half, you know? Anyway, so it's fun. It's wild that I don't even think they can grind meat to do that anymore. It's like fake meat now, or fake blood. Or the last time I worked for Trauma, we were just making fake blood, you know, and putting it through a hose. And so when somebody gets Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes to town, you know. So, and I want to again thank George Romero for being one of the most underrated directors of a series that will never die and will come back forever and ever. And we're glad that we're back to doing horror films, even though it took us till this film effects class. And I just, man, if I could have really expressed to anyone the day I finally saw this as an adult, ready to see it, how scared I was in the theater at USC. But now we've gone all the way to The Walking Dead, and it's still scary. It's still scary. And the special effects being the first thing they think about making a film like this is true. Now, we had said before that when you make a film effect, you got to be making it for a specific reason that's in the script about the effect. Because the special effect, if it's being made for an event in the film. Because you wouldn't make a special effect unless it's made for the event in the film. Maybe if you were just like seeing if you could do something and we're like, wow, I can, let's make a movie like that as a test package, that would work. But you've got to surrender to the fact that if you had a technical kit on how it worked, then you'd already have the process as it goes. So we're going to say goodbye for now. One last thing, the process that it goes, so like the special effect whether or not it's in the story or not, it's usually a special effect being crafted together for the script by the time the movie goes into production. And I know I missed that last point, but going into production on a movie, you should have a way to do all your special effects like as you're going into it. But if you're still crisscrossing trying to build a special effect that's not there, you can't find the footage, or the footage got annihilated, or whatever bad thing happened, well, it's no excuse, because remember, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas has some really good effects. Raptor tails, walls climbing up walls. I mean, a circus going blinky. Okay, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, we're going to stop there, and I'm going to go have the last of my weed, and I was glad to teach you Masterclass today. And we also give thanks to John Wagner, the mentor at Calarts, and we also give thanks to Drew Casper at ESC. And yeah, we give thanks to everyone that's helped with the show get on it and be with us this whole time. And we'll talk to you all later. We'll see you in Masterclass in a few days, okay? All right, bye.